in the North Country, I have told my colleagues from one end of the country to the other that the best summers in America are in upstate New York. Yeah. We even have people from Texas and Indiana who come back every summer here, right over there, which is a little bit of proof to that. I want to thank Mr. Schmidt and all the people who work here at the Antique Boat Museum. I've never been here, but I will be back and take a tour, because this is a great place. And looking, the beautiful surroundings, and the buildings are so well done, and all the famous names on them. It's great to be here, and I appreciate all the work that everybody who works here at the Boat Museum does. I want to thank, we have two of our elected officials, the supervisor of the town of Clayton, Justin Taylor, is here. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, for being here. And Norma Zimmer, who is standing up there, not as somebody who works at the Antique Museum, but rather as the mayor of the village. Clayton's a village, I presume? The village of Clayton. So thank you very much for being here as well. And in addition, who you'll hear, I don't know if you'll hear from, are you guys going to speak? Okay. Well, we have two people who represent what we're all about here. Pat Snyder, a well-known fishing guide and tournament official, is here, and Tard Zero, who's the owner of the Thousand Island Bait Shop, because we have really hundreds and hundreds of small businesses that depend on the fishing season and on tourism and everything else. So I thank you all for being here, as well as Mike Bristol, who's the director of helped us get set up here. But he was here a minute ago. Okay, well, as I said, it's summer in the North Country, and hundreds of residents across the region are baiting their hooks, firing up their boats, heading out on the water. People from all over the country come here and fish. And I speak out of personal experience, because every summer in August, I go fishing, sometimes successful, sometimes not, for smallmouth bass. In fact, one of the people who always accompanies me is our great luminary of the North Country, who does a great job in every way, John Johnson. And he usually catches more fish than me. But last year, my daughter came, and she caught more than any of us. And I think we're due to be back here on August 19th. So we'll be back here, and John suggested I go into Canadian waters. They left me, and that would solve the whole problem. But hopefully we can get it solved before then. We don't want to wait till August 19th to solve that problem. Anyway, so this is just such a beautiful area. For me, got out of Washington late last night with all the budget stuff going on. To just land at the Watertown Airport and drive here to Clayton. It's a great experience. It's just a great experience. You're probably used to it, but it's sort of like, my mom used to cook corned beef in a pressure cooker. She had one, I don't know if they still have those. Big, big pot. They had a little thing on the end that when the steam went, it went boop, 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 boop. Well, you come up here and you feel like all that pressure from big city life evaporates. You're just driving up here and being up here. So I love it. So, anyway, it's great to be here, and there's no better relief than the pressure of big city life, the scorching weather, demands of the office, than the calm waters of the St. Lawrence and Lake Ontario and others like it for a day of fishing, which, as I said, I experienced myself. I'm not supposed to say a fisherman anymore. I'm an angler. My Uncle Al, I'm used to mainly saltwater fishing, living in Brooklyn. But starting to, when I became senator, I started doing freshwater fishing, and I love it. And it's just great. Anyway, don't get me wrong, fishing isn't just fun and games, as we can see from commerce up here. It's a livelihood. And people depend on it here in the North Country, whether it's the fishermen themselves, the owner of bait shops like Todd, or local businesses that depend on the fishing and tourism industry. And that's why a recent incident has caused some alarm for all of the folks who live in these parts. Everyone doesn't have to be reminded. A nice angler from Baldwinsville, home of our Budweiser beer plant, which we're hopefully going to get to expand. There's another story later. They make a lot of good stuff there, and when InBev bought it. It's one of my projects. But anyway, I digress. Roy Anderson lived in Colquinsville, and he experienced a day fishing gone terribly wrong. A few weeks ago, he took his boat out Ganoke Narrows. Is that how you say it? Ganoke Narrows. I guess that's a French word or an Indian word. But anyway, Ganoke Narrows, just as he had done for years and years, he was carrying his Canadian fishing license. And he headed out to his favorite spot, which happens to be in Canadian waters. He had gone there year after year. As he sat in his boat on anchor, Roy was shocked, because the Canadian Border Service officers boarded his boat, seized his boat, and demanded he pay $1,000 to get it back. The reason, it turned out, is that Mr. Anderson had not reported his presence in Canada at a port of entry. But like most North Country fishermen, Roy was unaware that this check-in requirement applied to unanchored boats. He had no idea he was not in compliance with Canadian law, and so did thousands and thousands of other anglers who, this is something that was on the books but never enforced. I'm told, John, they still don't enforce it on Lake Ontario, so we're safe anyway. I don't know.
Don't try.
Yeah, we're not going to try. We're going to solve it before then, hopefully. Anyway, as the news of the incident spread, this is the danger. Obviously, the trouble Mr. Anderson went through. But the news of the danger spread, and people have become hesitant about coming up here. Fishermen are more hesitant to take out their boats if it means such financial risk. And as a result, we've had significantly lower numbers of people in the past. And who can blame them? How can an honest fisherman be expected to follow the rules when they don't even know when they've crossed the line, literally and figuratively? And what's worse, Mr. Anderson's boat season is now affecting some of the competitive fishing tournaments, which are huge economic drivers in the summer months. The New York Bass Chapter Federation already had to make Canadian waters off limits to anglers. Another tournament to be held here on July 28th, right here in Clayton, is considering how to adjust the tournament after recent events. And the FLW Ever Start Series is currently discussing ways they can keep their Canadian waters open ahead of the tournament. Now that's just the start. If we don't solve this problem, people may decide to go elsewhere and say it's not worth the bother. So we have to nip this in the bud. It comes down to this. If regulations and expectations of fishermen from the Canadian Border Service Agency remain murky, especially in regard to the North Country's famous tournaments, then the entire tournament season could be hindered, and along with it, the economy could take a real hit. So here's what I'm going to do. And I came right up here. Whenever there's a problem in the North Country, I try to come. And usually we solve the problem. I think they're still rebuilding the dam in Oswegatchie. I went there 2 days after it collapsed. So they were going to put a toll on the bridge. We went up there and dealt with that problem. So I always try to come when there's a problem because I think my presence here shows the authorities how much I really care. So today I'm sending a personal letter to 2 people. The Acting Customs and Border Protection Commissioner, Alan Burson, who fortunately needs to be voted on by my finance committee to get approved, so have a little clout there, and to Canadian Border Services Agency, his analog in Canada, he's called Luc Portelance. Did I say that one right? Good. Okay. I said it right. To encourage them to work together and develop a method by which they can conduct security clearance procedures of tournament participants ahead of time, so they're free to fish on both sides of the border in upcoming tournaments. Under the plan, the competitors would submit the information, simple information, before the tournament began. There'd be a simple place to call. You'd say, I'm going to be here. You don't have to cross the border, which didn't make any sense anyway. If you had to report on Canadian soil to Canadian authorities and you're coming from the U.S., you had to violate the law to comply with the law. It's sort of a catch-22. So under the plan, we could submit information ahead of time, just make a call, and receive clearance from the Canadians to fish in their waters, and then Whether you're an angler out for the day like Mr. Anderson, or you're a tournament director, you know that your boats can go anywhere. You can fish at ease from one shore to the other. Pre-clearing competitors would be a win-win for Americans and Canadians alike. It would allow the CBSA to know who's operating in Canada's territorial waters. They're entitled to do that. It would allow licensed fishermen to operate without fear of being fined or having their property confiscated. But just, you're out there relaxing and you don't want to wonder, where's the Canadian border? As your boat drifts, where you see a school of fish somewhere over there. So it's time we loosen the tourniquet on regulations that threaten the cancellation of long-standing fishing tournaments so important to the North Country. These competitive adventures bring together fishermen and families from both nations. They provide serious economic benefit to fishermen, bait stores, lodging, motels, restaurants, local businesses, other tourist activities, and for both New York and for our neighbors on the other side of the bay. The cancellation of or potential changes to competitive fishing tournaments could have a devastating effect on Jefferson County tourism and local businesses. I vow here today to do everything in my power to help both sides come to a solution that is satisfactory to all. And I'm optimistic that we can get that done. We already got a call this morning knowing that I was coming here from the Canadians saying, what can we do? Give them a nice little. Okay. Whenever I'm up here, I'm reminded of an old parrot. Fishing isn't a matter of life and death. It's much more important than that. And any of us who have experienced the beauty of being out here on the North Country waters know exactly what people mean, so we're going to keep it that way. With that, anyone else want to say anything? Thank you, Supervisor, Mayor.
Thank you for coming.
Great. Okay. Great. Okay, then I'm ready for. Yes, ma'am.
I have a good luck charm for your next fish.
Don't give it to Johnson also.
Actually, you can have just one. I'm going to hand them to your staff.
Isn't that great? These are beautiful. Well, my chief of staff, Mike, who has kept me in great shape for all the years I've been senator, has 3 rules in public for me. No dancing, no singing, no hats. Now you say, why no hat? Because remember when Michael Dukakis in the 1988 campaign put on that helmet, that was the end of it? But we're making an exception. He has a black gentleman. We had one. Dunlop Tires makes the tires in Buffalo for Harley Davidson. And a foreign country was interfering with it, China, I think it was. So I went up there to try and help, and we did. We kept 400 jobs up there. But I went to a Harley dealer. I said, get on the Harley, get on the Harley. And knowing Mike Lynch's admonition that I'm not supposed to take these pictures in any type of way, Max Young, who was he was our upstate press secretary after Wayne's job, and now he been promoted further. But Max Young was, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. But I went on, I couldn't resist. And on the front page of the Buffalo News was a picture of me on a Harley, and right behind me was Max Young with a look of such fear on his face, saying, I'm going to be fired. So Lane had a little bit of that, but the hat isn't as bad as the Harley. Yeah. Okay, anyway, for the media, I'm ready for your questions. Oh, anyone else want to say anything? Yes, sir. Just say your name.
Jeff Durham with the Clayton Guys Association on the question.
Sure.
The emphasis seems to have been on the tournament.
Yeah.
There are some...
No, this will be for everyone.
Across the board.
Across the board. The immediate danger is the tournaments because there's, no one's going to be canceled. But the rule would be for everybody. And you could free a guide or just an average angler could just call this number and say, I'm going to be fishing. Okay? Yeah.
That number that comes into effect, will that be readily available?
Yeah, we'll make it available, and I'm sure it'll be in...
People like us, just pay taxes and...
You bet.
along the river?
You bet. We will do this for everybody. I don't want people to think we're going to deal with the tournaments and nobody else. I just stressed the tournaments because they were the most immediate issue that we brought up. But they'll be for everybody, and hopefully it'll be easy, and maybe you won't even need it. We're going to work out the most feasible, easy, non-interfering way possible for everybody.
Another question to that effect. Fishing up here over 40 years. How about past practice? Been doing it for 40 years. I was out at Canadian fishing license, and I have never been approached by anyone.
I know. That's what was so
I
shocking.
mean, doesn't past practice make
You can take that up with them. Look, we're gonna be Angelo Rivero, who runs our office up here, is gonna be talking to everybody before the Canadians seem to wanna work with us. It's bad for them, and we will talk with everybody and figure out the easiest and best thing. I think, you can't ask the Canadians not to have any jurisdiction over their sovereign waters, and so they have to do something, but let's make it as easy and simple as
When
possible.
we get a Canadian fishing license, why don't they tell us?
Maybe that's enough. That might be. But we know we could have the toughest security in America, but we want to make sure that if Canada doesn't have as tough security, because they weren't victimized the way we were at that point in time, that terrorists or other people don't use Canada the way they're coming here. So you have to do something. But there has to be a balance. This is what I stress with the Border Patrol and the immigration and everybody else between security and commerce. You can't just be on one side of it. And we have worked on this, and we have, in New York State, the second busiest amount of crossings between Canada and the U.S. of any state. Michigan is the only one bigger. We have more even than Washington State between Vancouver and Seattle. So we keep a constant eye on it. As you know, there have been some problems with the bridge, and we try to solve those, and we will try any suggestions people have to make it better. Yes, sir. Mr. Texas.
Any chance of an exemption for anglers, non-angler, like we
Yes.
run the
Look,
question that...
I'm going to try to make this as simple and easy as possible. There have been no problems, as I know. So why the Canadians did this, who knows? Maybe it's some kind of internal politics. There's been, in Canada, the border issue it relates to their sovereignty. They don't want America pushing them around, when it comes to their sovereignty. We've had that in many different ways. But they're also very nice people. And so we've always been able to work things out. We just worked out something over at the Peace Bridge on the other end, by here, Niagara Falls, where the American side can pre-inspect all the trucks on the Canadian side, because there's more room on the Peace Bridge side, on the Canadian side of the Peace Bridge than the American. So we will try to work all these things out. We'll compile. It's pleasure boating, it's fishing, it's tours, and it's tournaments. Okay, we'll look at all of it. Yes, sir.
While you're working diligently on this problem, how do we handle ourselves in the interim? Pleasure boaters and fishermen.
Well, we haven't had any other problems, and you know what? When we speak to the Canadians this afternoon, we will ask them that question. Okay? That's a very good idea, and we'll get it out to the media today or tomorrow, what they say. Okay? Yes, sir. That's a great question. Thank you for asking.
My problems I have been traveling on this side with the expansion of lots of government. I had season tickets at hockey games, having traveled along the border. I got picked up 4 times by Border Patrol at 7 games. That's just the
U.S.?
U.S. Border Patrol.
Coming back or here? Going to?
No, staying on our side of the border.
Really?
This proliferation of government on this side is really the thing that started this. Our northern neighbors are our best friends, our largest trading partners. We got 3,000 miles, and I know you see everything. The last thing is, I've watched your career, a lot of hard work you got.
Well, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And we'll check into that as well. What's your name? I forgot. I know you.
Fred Bravo.
Mr. Bravo, if you please call Angelo.
Yep.
Give him those incidents. We won't use your name, but it helps us make sure they do a better job.
I put him in the newspaper.
Okay. Don't worry about the name. Questions from the media?
Now, for local hunting and fishing guys in the area, I know a lot of the times that they do want to fish in Canadian waters.
Yeah.
Their clients that they have coming from different states throughout the
Sure.
country, they have to gather their information in order to obtain these Canadian fishing licenses. Are they going to, this number that you're providing, will the hunting and
Well,
the fishing...
I said I'm going to suggest that we have a number. I don't know what the Canadians will propose. I want to make it easy and simple as possible.
Follow me with that. If this number does go through, and that will be the agreement that is made, will the local fishing guys have to provide each individual person's information? Will that be okay, or will those people individually have to call the
Oh, no, I think it would be silly to have each. If you got a fishing group coming 3 weeks from all over the country, I think it would be a lot easier to have the fishing guide provided for everybody. Just as, you know, the guide probably, I don't know how it works with a Canadian fishing license, but probably gets the licenses for people in advance, right?
Sir, one thing you mentioned was the fact that in order to comply with the law, you have to break the law. Can you talk a little bit more about that and about...
Well, it's sort of silly. If you have to actually call the Canadian authorities that you're in Canadian water from a Canadian port of entry or Canadian soil, and you're on the American side with a boat, and you go into the... To comply with the law, you'd have to cross the river, go on Canadian water to comply with the law, but it meant you would be violating the law before you got to the Canadian side and called. It makes no sense. Yes, sir.
What is your optimal position? Because, you know, having this
I don't want to prejudge how to do it, other than to tell you I want to make sure that nobody is going to be deterred by an onerous system. On the other hand, Canadians have their sovereignty, and if we just said ignore it, that would get their back up. So I want to make sure we do it in the right way.
One of the other things you mentioned is you gave a, you know, they called you this morning and, you know, you gave them sort of a list of things that you wanted. Maybe we can go into some more specifics of...
No, I didn't give I'm going to compile the list and then give it to them. But they called this morning in a very nice way, I would say, and said we want to cooperate. We don't want... Look, Canadian commerce and business is as much at stake as America.
Now, are we as tough on them as they are on us at this point, do you know?
I don't think we are. And, you know, this may have just been an aberration. I don't know the details. I don't think anyone's uncovered why they did this to Mr. Anderson all of a sudden. Now, could it have been politics? Located somewhere in Ottawa? I don't know. So we're going to find out. But I do know this, a few years ago, when we had one of the problems on one of our bridges almost settled, some guy in the Canadian Parliament got up and made a big fuss and said the U.S. is not treating us with respect, and it set it back for a while. So we want to treat everybody with respect, but we want to get the problem done, and done quickly and easily, so, you know, the great industry here of fishing and tourism continues as it has been in the past. That's the goal. Keep it the way it was in the past, and respect Canadian sovereignty at the same time. That would be, is that a fair way to sum it up? Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do you know how many of these Canadian customs checking points are along?
I don't know. We'll find out. I don't. Does anyone know?
We
Ron,
we
today?
have a listing, not readily available, we have a listing upstairs, we can give you of all the check-in points along the river.
Fred has them, but
Right.
it still makes no sense to have an American angler have to check in on Canadian soil.
Now, in the past, you only had to check in once a year. You would go, you would register your boat, your number, the people that would be in your boat. Would that be something that you would think would be...
I want to make it as easy as possible. I don't want to...
That's not accurate.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't want to prejudge anything. I want to make it as easy as possible. That's my goal.
Do you think you anticipate hearing from the Canadian officials this afternoon?
Yes. And I think, look, I have to tell you, my view is that they're going to want to solve this problem, too. It's a question of communication.
Well, why do you believe that? I mean, have they...
Just the way they talked on the phone this morning. They said on the phone that they want to work this out in an amiable way.
And who are you talking about again?
Someone from the office of Mr.
Luke?
Yes. Yeah. Hmm? Yeah. Okay.
Senator Schumer,
Yes, sir.
my name's Bob Grabo. I'm from the Albany area, but I've been voting up here all my life. Congressman Owen sent a letter